Welcome to North American Ag Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. My guest today is a seasoned professional with experience in corporate and strategic finance across various industries, including technology and agriculture. Known for his ability to foster collaboration and innovation, he brings people and ideas together to navigate complex challenges and uncover new opportunities. He leads a company called netgreen.com, a FINRA registered funding portal dedicated to supporting and nurturing businesses in agriculture. Today, I'm excited because we're going to talk about alternative ways to fund a small ag business and ways that the public can invest in agriculture as well. We'll also be talking about the idea of decentralizing the food supply chain, which I'm always interested in. From the South Shore of Massachusetts, I would like to welcome Rob Amuzzini, CEO and co-founder of netgreen.com. Welcome, Rob, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Chrissy. I appreciate the opportunity.
So let's start off with your background. Were you raised in the agriculture industry? What sparked this?
Yeah, I've always had a deep-rooted passion for agriculture, which comes from my upbringing. I didn't have firsthand farm knowledge, but me and my co-founder, Tyler, we grew up in the Aroostook County, northern Maine, so in the sticks, about just like a few minutes from the Canadian border. And that is potato country for anyone who doesn't know that. That's the primary produce up there. So potato farms were always something that we had around us. And ever since then, I mean, I guess it gives you an appreciation of when you have access to a local farm where you're getting your food like that, gives you an appreciation for like where your food actually comes from. And that's always been something that stayed with me. Then when I went to college, to be honest, I actually wanted to go into finance to be like a hedge fund manager or something similar like that. I quickly got disillusioned with that idea. So I kept on the corporate finance track, working for doing consulting and working for various companies in the in different industries. Now I'm kind of back into, well, how can I leverage the experience I have and get back to that idea of like pooling resources to finance kind of the right ideas, the right things, right? And that's when I actually have another friend who started his own crowdfunding business. He's been a good mentor, and I had a conversation with him about it. And this was like, this is something new that's kind of like picking up in the industry overall. And that crowdfunding, that is just kind of gaining more traction. So now I'm kind of like, all right, well, how do I leverage that experience to do something impactful and actually make like real change? And so what we landed on was, well, what if we kind of combine this with our, our love and appreciation for agriculture, because that's an industry that definitely needs something done. And, you see kind of the failings of government to get involved in things like this, where, I mean, the number one complaint that people have right now across the country, kind of like universally, is where are my taxes going? And it's, well, not where you want them to be going. What our idea here is don't wait for the government to step in. Don't wait for rich people to step in. We can actually just do this on our own. So what we're doing is just providing a platform so that communities can reinvest in the farms that serve them. And the other thing that's nice about it is it creates this feedback loop between the farms and the communities, where your communities are going to finance farms that are using practices that they condone, right? And so you kind of have like that market feedback that misses when the government gets involved, because the government's always going to kind of come in top down. When you have the community investing, it's the same idea of voting with your wallet, right? But now instead of just buying products, it's okay, well, we're actually going to invest money into you so that you can buy land, build up your infrastructure, and like grow your farm, within reason. Large farms have their own problems, right? So we're kind of like working in that small to medium farm size, where we're looking at farms that will kind of be like, serving more locally or like regionally rather than like the large producers. I mean, the other reason being because like, especially like hyper large farms, they're going to do their own thing for investing. So they're probably not even really interested in doing business with us necessarily, right? But, the small, medium farms, they kind of get left behind. The best, one of the best options that they've even had available to them is USDA loans, right? And you probably even have more experience with that than me, of the kind of like the stipulations and the red tape that comes with getting involved with taking out like kind of a traditional like term loan, when you have someone that you have to answer to that doesn't really understand your business or what your needs actually are. Another thing that we're doing is helping people step away from, well, I'm trying to get my feet under me and you're telling me my first payment's due in 30 days. This doesn't work like that. The revenue sharing note is our primary vehicle for financing. And the way that works is it's actually revenue based. So you, as the farmer, the person issuing the financing, the offering, as we call it, you will set your own terms. You'll say, I'm going to start paying back in 2 years because I'm not going to make any revenue off of this growth project until then. I'm going to pay it all back within 7 years. So it basically gives myself 5 years to pay it back, right? And then the actual payments will be based on your revenue performance. So you might be paying faster or slower. And then you'll make a balloon payment at the end if you need to, or you might pay it off early and you don't owe anything at the end when it's maturing, right? Then what the investor gets is they get a reasonable return. Okay, like we're not going to necessarily, it's going to be dependent on the investment. They're all going to be a little different because it's going to be a balancing act of what works for the farmer and what works for the investors, right? So, we can't guarantee returns. That's not what we're here to do, but you will get a return on your investment if it gets paid back. And you get the impact of, I helped a farmer that, I go to at my local farmer's market, I buy my beef and chicken from them, right? And I invested in their business, and look at this. They've doubled their output in the last 5 years, and I got to be a part of that.
Right. Yeah. So I love this idea on so many levels, especially I think as there are fewer farmers, of course, larger farms, fewer farmers, but this gives an option for some smaller, maybe weekend farmers, people who have jobs outside, to be able to get in to agriculture and sell their products. I just think it's such a great idea. And so can you tell me technically how does the platform work, for both the farmer and for the investor?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so we'll start on the business side. So you have some sort of need to raise money, whether that's perhaps you're just starting out in farming, which we would encourage. I'm trying to partner with organizations that do education and consulting for this reason. But like, if you're a new farmer, I'm going to recommend, like, okay, go through one of these education courses. Like, let's make sure that you can do what you're hoping you can do here. And then you're going to have farms that they already have their existing business. Maybe they just want to grow more pasture so that they can have more heads of cattle, right? Maybe they want to buy some new infrastructure because they're having a tough time with labor and they need some technology to decrease their labor needs, right? Maybe they're kind of doing more conventional farming and they're interested in getting into regenerative practices, but they know, like, hey, we're going to have to do a bunch of land renovations essentially as part of this, and we're going to probably take a down tick in revenue for a couple of years before we pick it back up. So kind of like expansions and traditions or transitions are kind of like where I see like the meat of it being, but definitely want to be there for those small farmers, like you said, that like, maybe they're just like doing it on weekends, they're selling what they can at their local farmers market, and then they're like, hey, this could just be my full-time job. I want those people too, right? And so what they do is they come to us. Best thing to do is go to our website, and I'll say it again at the end of the podcast, but it's www.netgreen.com. Right on the home page, you can scroll down, you'll see a button that says apply for fundraising. At the top, under the ribbon resources, there's a drop down menu. You'll see it there also, button apply for fundraising. That brings you to a contact form, and it will ask you some basic questions, kind of just about your business, who you are, your contact info, and then a brief summary of like what your business plan is. That will put you in our system. I'll get an email and then I'll reach out to you directly. So that's kind of step one if you're interested in like coming to raise money or learn more. From there, we'll work together. Like, the thing is I want to just stress, like, so we are a marketplace. We're not officially like a broker dealer. So kind of the distinguishing difference is, like, we're not making recommendations on who people should be investing in. We're just providing a platform. So we put the issuers and the investors together. That's what we do, right? I just want to make that distinction. So like, but part of that is I'm your partner in this. So I see it as my job to walk you through like, okay, your business plan, right? We're going to do the business planning together. That's something that I will help people with. I will help them fill out their Form C, which is the investment disclosure documentation. That will be issued online on the marketplace. So on our homepage on the top, you'll see it in the ribbon marketplace, and then that's where you'll go to like actually see open investments. One of the things that gets listed is the Form C disclosure, and that basically gives the rundown of who your owners are. Just different details about the business, kind of like the boring stuff, but then the exciting stuff too, where what's your actual plan? What are some financial projections that you're kind of working towards? And any other kind of key disclosure items that need to be on there, like one of your owners also has a stake in another company or whatever. Anything else that needs to be disclosed will be in that document, but it's kind of like the key disclosure doc. And it will also lay out the terms. When's your first payment date going to be? When's your maturity date? How much are you paying back? So it kind of, the way this works in a revenue sharing note is you choose a multiple. So I want to borrow $100,000. I'm willing to pay back $140,000. So your multiple becomes 1.4. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we can do there is kind of compare that to, well, if you were using a traditional like term loan, how much would you have to pay back if you got it at 2%, 4%, 5%, and you were going to pay it back in the same amount of time, 7 years, 10 years? And we can use that as a comparable. Okay, and then if you do that, then you get a 1.3 or 1.4 multiple or a 1.5 multiple. And then then you're in the range of like what a market comparable is and offering like what even a bank would expect for this, right?
Right.
So that's kind of like where we partner, and then where we continue the partnership is in the marketing, because now what we do is we get the escrow account set up. We have a banking partner, North Capital. They're a digital bank that specializes in crowdfunding and alternative investments. So they're going to handle all the financial data and the transactions to kind of keep our hands like clean of that, so to speak. And we will set up the escrow account with them once we have that disclosure document all set up and the terms set for the offering. And then it's marketing time. So we tell the farmers, go out to your local farmers market, advertise as much as you can, get people in your community involved. We're going to do the same thing on our end. We'll do targeted advertising in your community, but we'll also do it to our broader community too, because some people don't necessarily care that it's a farm that's down the street. Like it could be a farm that like, hey, you guys ship. That's good enough for me. Like, so we're gonna, but that's where we'll continue the partnership is in the marketing. We will handle all of the transaction kind of minutia, right? That's all on us. We handle all of that. We handle all of the notifications and everything that are required to go out to the investors. And then once that campaign closes, there will be a deadline set ahead of time. So once that campaign closes, either by a successful raise or hitting the deadline, we will then issue the money through the escrow to the business. We get paid by the investor. So the only additional cost that the issuer will take on is they will be responsible for whatever that distribution method is going to be back to the investor. So when it's time to start making repayments, they can either do a custody account with North Capital, or they can set it up some other way, as long as all the investors agree, like, yeah, that's an acceptable payment method for us. We will help them with that process. We'll make sure that they have all the information they need to get the payment to people. But that is one thing that they will be responsible for. But like I said, we'll be there to help them with that. We take our fee out of, essentially the investor pays for that, so that we're not burdening them with an additional like administrative cost. Seeing as how the issuing business is trying to raise this money and get their business going. We also pay for the escrow fees. But because we do take on a lot of this stuff, I mean, we really can't do an investment for less than $50,000. So there's some farms that are below that like won't be able to use us. But fortunately, there's good programs like at Whole Foods, for example. I know they've just started doing a micro loan program for small farms. It's like, that's great. Walk into a Whole Foods. and see about getting like $5,000 or $10,000 if that's all you need. That might work out, right? So I think that takes us through the investor or the issuer side. So if you're an investor, it's very straightforward for you. You go to NetGreen, up in the top right corner of the web page, there's a sign up button. You can sign up, make an account. And unfortunately, you are going to have to answer pesky questions like what's your income and what's your net worth. That's part of, if you go to Fidelity or E-Trade or any other like kind of SEC site for investing in public stocks, it just comes with the territory. You have to answer those questions, and we have to ask them too. That information does get used for like if you don't qualify as an accredited investor, you might have limits on how much you can invest under regulation crowdfunding. So just an FYI for investors who are new to this world. Now you can go to the marketplace, you can look at offerings, you see one that you like, you review the summary of it, you check the Form C out, you like everything looks good to you, it's a farm down the street, I want to invest $1,000. You just click invest, it's right there on the offering page, all laid out, real simple. Then it will walk you through the steps. If you haven't already linked a bank account, that's when you can link a bank account if you haven't done so already. And like I said, this all gets done through a banking partner, so you can trust the bank, you don't even have to trust us. And that's pretty much it as far as action items. And then we'll be sending out notifications to keep you updated. So we'll let you know when the campaign has reached 50% of its target. We'll let you know when it's at 100% of its target. Sometimes there's a max target that's above like the minimum target. So the issuing business might want to keep it going, even though they already reached their target early. They can keep it going to see if they hit their max target before the deadline.
I see.
But in any case, once it closes, we let you know. In the event that a campaign doesn't reach its deadline or doesn't reach its target by the deadline, then that will be a campaign failure. That's fine. We return everyone's money. So you get your money back. You don't owe us NetGreen anything. You get all your money back from your investment commitment. That all just gets refunded to your account. And for the issuing business, like they can try again. Maybe they need to change their terms. Maybe we try it with a longer deadline. Maybe it was like, maybe it was like a marketing effort. Something else could come up, like, maybe like just business changes or some other issue. But we will handle that and take care of it. And then as an investor, we offer a comments board on each offering. There will be like a comments section for like an open discussion forum. So you'll be in communication with the issuing business. You can talk to them directly there. We'll have contact information listed. So you're never going to be like in the dark. They'll owe you an annual report. Anything that they're going to put in the annual report, they'll kind of detail that out in the disclosure document. So as an investor that you'll at least hear from an annual report once a year. Once it's repayment time, you'll start getting money flowing back into your bank account. And hopefully, if all goes well, you will get all your money by the maturity date. I don't think I missed anything. That's at least got to be the most important stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what I really like about the site is that you can actually go through some of these farms, see pictures, hear their story. I think that's really cool.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And to that point, we have a farm stand page, which is a place where we're just, right now it's a few of my local farms and places that I've interacted with. We'll broaden that out. We won't list a farm on the marketplace and the farm stand at the same time. That's like a legal reason. We're only going to have you listed on one or the other. But once you've completed an offering on our site, we're more than happily put you on the farm stand page. That's a way for users to kind of like additional like engagement so that they can go to those farms. Like you said, click on it, you go to their site, you get to check them out. You're like, hey, that place isn't that far away, or they ship to my area, right? And then you can just order stuff from them if you're interested.
Yeah, it's a
So
great
that's
resource for everyone.
yeah, that's right. That's
Mhm.
right. And the community page, what we're doing there is this is like building up an ecosystem. One of the things I want to stress too is, like I said, I'm the partner, I'm your partner in this if you're issuing with us. I mean, obviously I'm here for the investors too. I'm their customer service agent, but with the issuer, I really see myself as like your business partner on this, right? And under no circumstances is you defaulting good for me. I don't want that, right?
Right.
So I want everyone to succeed that comes on to our platform and wants to issue an offering. And so that's part of what's going on with the community page. I've been reaching out, like I said, to education and consulting companies particularly, but any organization that offers any sort of support for the farming industry, I'm putting them on that community page so that we have this central repository where it's like, here's a listing of the organizations that I've been in touch with that I know will be like willing to help you. And so just having those resources available and making sure that I'm giving farmers the tools for success, because again, I want them to succeed. That's what's best for me in the long term. It's what's best for investors in the long term. And obviously it's what's best for them.
Right. Yeah. So what happens if there is a default?
Yes. So if there is a default, now if you're the issuer, you are essentially putting yourself up for bankruptcy, because just like any other crediting terms that you might, like whether it's a term loan or some other debt instrument that you're issuing, you're taking the risk of going bankrupt if you can't repay that. Now, this is an unsecured debt. Like, we're not, what you get in return for investing in this is you get a share of the revenue, right? But there's no underlying asset. We're not asking farmers to put anything up for collateral. So if you can't make repayments, then you're going to go through the same credit trouble that you would for any other debt instrument. Now, the court might say, well, you can at least pay investors back this much and make you pay that amount. Okay. So now, as an investor, you might not end up with zero in the event of a default. Maybe they made half their payments before they had business trouble and couldn't make them anymore. Maybe in the event of bankruptcy, you get some sort of salvage value for your investment. But essentially, you're not going to recover your full investment. And that's part of the risk that you take by investing in an asset class like this. I would just emphasize it's not actually any different than if you make an equity investment in a company and the company fails, it goes to zero. It's kind of the same deal here. The only kind of saving grace you have is because it's a debt instrument, you might get something out of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've thought a lot about the concept of decentralization when it comes to our food supply a lot over the last few years. In your opinion, what are the key benefits of decentralizing parts of the food supply? Obviously, not all of it.
Yep.
And how does it contribute to food security and resilience?
Yes, yeah, great stuff. So kind of the key for me, as far as resiliency, and I think that this got exposed during COVID, the last thing you want is to be dependent on someone else to be sending you food. Because if those supply chains break down, whether it's because plants had to shut down or just because of general shortages, I mean, you saw how like things started happening. Fertilize, not even pandemic related, but Ukraine going into a war and not being able to ship fertilizer out, that came with hunger problems, right? Then you got the pandemic on top of that, where you're just kind of missing out on certain inputs that go into the whole process because certain areas are getting shut down and just falling behind on demand. Plus, you kind of have like, unfortunately, people will start hoarding stuff too, right? So then you have an increased demand on certain things, which then means like, okay, but more for you means less for someone else, right? And I don't want to perpetuate the idea of zero sum. Like, that's not ultimately like what we're up against here. I mean, there can be more for everyone if we all work together on it. But anyway, that we'll get into that.
Mhm.
So, but that's where I see the decentralization really building the resilience is when you have a local point where, especially when you do have a regenerative farm, and we'll tie this into it too. So when you can focus on improving the soil and water health by becoming part of the Earth's natural carbon and water cycle rather than working against it, the nice thing is you are less reliant on those outside inputs. So that coupled with now, scalability can be a little bit of an issue, but again, we're looking at small and medium farms here. So when you're just supplying your local area, your local region, you don't necessarily need to be a large scale farm to do that. Particularly if most of these farms will have some sort of livestock embedded in their process here, like cattle, chickens, pigs, and whatnot. Then it's even easier for you to feed more people on less, right? You need a lot of land for the pasture and everything, and you'll need to make sure that you have like, hey, dig out a place for a pond so that you have a reservoir and a high place on your land, right? Have some apple trees and blueberry bushes for your pigs to eat. Maybe you have a bunch of extra produce from your fields that you can feed to your chickens and pigs so that they're getting like some of that stuff in their diet too, right? Or like, hey, you don't have chickens and pigs on your farm, but one of your farmer friends nearby, they got chickens and pigs. So like, hey, you're a corn farmer. That's great. All your extra corn that you can't sell that's rotted or not up to par, send it to them. That's feed that they can use, right? It's kind of like that's the idea of like having these like localized points of distribution for people to have access to where they're less reliant on the outside world for the inputs. They kind of support each other by using that like holistic, like regenerative approach. And then you as the consumers, you're getting your food from your farm at your local farmers market. So you're not worried about did my grocery store get its freight orders in today? You know, it takes that kind of concern away from it, right?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so how do you see net green contributing to this decentralization of the food supply specifically?
Yeah, perfect. So I've already explained what the platform kind of does, and then
Mhm.
bringing that to how it fits in here. So once again, we're going to be kind of focused on the small and medium farms that would otherwise have to rely on detached institutions. Now we're giving them a way of here, you can bypass your government, you can bypass those big banks that don't care about you, go get money from your local communities, right? So we're giving them an avenue to get the financing that would otherwise kind of have like a lot of red tape that comes with it,
Mhm.
making it more accessible to them where they can just go, like I said, once again, go directly to their communities and, hey, we want to do more for you. Can you help us out? Right.
Right.
This will create basically the way this will work is it will create more freedom in the marketplace so that more of these farms can flourish, more of these farms can start up. And then what will happen is you'll kind of have a return to the way things were not so long ago. I think it was even just 100 years ago where the farming workforce as a percentage of the total workforce was still at like 10%. It was like 10 and 20% for the longest time, right? And now it's down
Right.
to 1%, maybe even a little less. It's good and it's bad, right? It's like it's good. The good of it is like not everyone needs to be a farmer. The bad of it is, well, a lot of it not has just come from technology, but kind of the consolidation and centralization of farms, which has its own headaches that come with that, right? Then that goes back to the resiliency issue that we're talking about, where we're trying to decentralize a little bit, but that does mean you'll have to increase the labor portion that goes to farming a little bit. Now, after COVID, that doesn't seem like it's going to be an issue because it looks like more and more people want to do this. I've seen like, even just in my local area, lots of people getting into farming. I listen to podcasts like yours, and it sounds like everyone's trying to get into farming right now. So it's a good time. Maybe it's a good time to do it. And again, this just makes it more accessible to people where they can get that financing without having to go to an institution and ask them for a credit loan.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And another thing that I really like about your mission is that you're connecting the community, and not just for that connection, the one-way connection where they get food from the farmer, but they also will start to grow in education because people are so far removed from where their food comes from. I like that this can foster that interest and nurture that possibility of education through this relationship too.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing we hope to achieve with the community page, right? Just having that repository there, not just for the farmers, but maybe you're just interested in learning a little bit more about what a sustainable agriculture actually entails. You can click on one of those sites on there and go check it out. And lo and behold, they have videos or articles or whatever that you can get into. And again, just about like education for the public of this is what it takes to make that food that I eat.
Right. Yeah. Do you have any examples of farms that you've helped? Any cool stories or anything?
So unfortunately our first transaction that we did was not with a farm, but I'll tell you a little bit about it because I think it's a pretty cool
Mhm.
story. It was
Yeah.
a couple of family members who essentially wanted to pool their resources, and I've been a big advocate of this idea for a while. It's hard enough to get a first home, yet alone a vacation home, right?
Mhm.
So they were interested in the area in upstate New York, the Adirondacks, And, they wanted to pull their resources. So how do you do that? It's like, well, you form a company and you use the company as your avenue to dictate ownership. If you need to dictate scheduling or whatever else, you can do that through the company too, if you want, but you just have like a vehicle to like hold the asset so that it's not held by either person. And then like, family drama and whatnot. It kind of, there will always be some family drama, but it takes a lot of that out of it. You can do it with a group of friends too. It doesn't even have to be family. The other aspect of this that was pretty cool is, what's the point in having a vacation home if you're not going to do anything with it when you're not there? So this
Right.
particular property that they wanted to buy, that was exactly what was being done. It was a guy's snowmobile camp that he used for a couple weeks out of the year, and it just sat there otherwise. So what they're doing is this is going to be a vacation home for when we take family vacations up to the Adirondacks. We're not going to be there most of the time. We're going to rent it out on Airbnb. An older family member gets involved and says, well, don't go to a bank. This is a good idea. Let me be your bank. So it's like, perfect. Generational investing. That's how I think of that, right? Where it's like, that's something that's missing in our society today is you need to realize that like none of this matters if we're not leaving it behind to somebody, right?
Mhm.
And it's like having children is like one of the most meaningful things you can do for that reason because it like opens your eyes to like this is what it's all for, right?
Right.
And so what I like about this idea is it's you should always plan for your retirement, of course. If she was willing to take her retirement account funds and invest them in here, like you're going to give me a repayment on my investment. I trust you. Let me invest in you guys, and now you have a way to pay this back. And I just helped like my next generation one, produce a little bit more wealth for themselves, and two, you're going to boost that local economy because rather than 50 weeks out of 52 weeks of the year of the house being vacant, you're going to have like maybe you have like a 50% occupancy rate now where there's going to be people going in and out of there. It's a great little town. They're going to go to the local cafes, they're going to go to the grocery store, they're going to go to the brewery down the street, they're going to go use the lake. So, all kinds of economic boons now just from the fact that like you took a home that's otherwise just sitting there. Yeah, you pay taxes on it, but what else is it doing to contribute, right? So that's kind of like that's just a cool story. I mean, and that's the kind of stuff that we want to do too. I mean, we want to focus on farming and agriculture. I see that as like our bread and butter. But the idea of like responsible real estate investing, I want to be a little careful. Like I don't necessarily condone the idea of big companies like abusing Airbnb properties necessarily. But that's kind of why like what I like about this, where it's like, well, we can have that nuance where it's like this particular case, I see the value in this. If BlackRock comes and says, not that they would use us again, right? But if BlackRock was coming and saying, like, we want to buy 100 properties for Airbnb, I might say, like, well, it's a good thing you guys have your own platform to do that with. Then we'll sit this one out, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, Moving back to your question on the farms, we're working with a few farms in the pipeline right now. I'll talk to you about one of them because we're pretty far along with them, but I want to be careful because like I don't have any 100% certainty that they'll be listed. So I'll just give you like a few high level details. It is a cattle ranch in Brazil. They they have been operating their family farm for at least 30 years. And what they have about 700 head of cattle now, and they want to expand to like ultimately to like 10,000 cattle, but there's going to be stepping stones along the way. And so they want to do an investment so that they can buy more pasture land and make that first step in expanding their operation. Now they're already doing pasture raised cattle and incorporating regenerative practices in their farm. What the other thing they want to do though, in addition to the land expansion, is start integrating some new novel technologies, right? So there's a there's a drone company that they've worked with, and the drone company would essentially be for surveying your land, keeping an eye on things, general monitoring. I think you'll be able to monitor like certain aspects of like the pastures, like the
Wow.
soil and the water, right? Another cool technology they had, and this is kind of like one of those silly stupid things that's just like wow, like why didn't we do that before? A woman in Maryland designed a pregnancy test that is based on scent. So you wave your little magical wand in front of the cow and it will beep an answer for you if the cow's pregnant or not. So there's no more like hiring the vet to come out and figure out, oh, is this cow pregnant? It's just quick test with whoever your farmhand is, and hey,
Interesting.
that's a pregnant cow. Let's separate them, right? Like, so it's things like that that they want to incorporate into their farm. And I hope to do. I honestly I see that like cattle ranches will probably be like a big portion of like where we do business, just because of the capital needed to buy all the land. I think the estimate that they had was they're using between 2 and 5% of their pastures at any given time because they rotate their cattle so much, right? And so
Right.
you think about that. I mean, like you have 10,000 cattle, and you're only going to be having them feed on about 5% of your pasture at a time. You're going to need a lot of freaking land for that, right? So now 10,000 cattle feeds a lot of people. So that's, that shouldn't be missed either. But that's where, and I hope to get a lot more like that. And we've been working with a few other farms. I am trying to get a lot up here in New England because geographically, like we'd like to go New England, East Coast, Midwest, West Coast, and
Right.
then do more international stuff. But I'm not going to turn away anyone, just because it's not in line with our like marketing strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then like I see another like opportunity on the international front. Farmers are having a tough time in Europe right now. I believe they just got a big win where a lot of European politicians kind of like folded in with all the recent riots, which it's like I don't want to call them riots. Shouldn't have said that. All the
Yeah.
recent protests.
Yeah, that's right.
They kind of folded in on themselves and finally said like, all right, we get you, we hear you, and we're going to make some concessions for you. And that's great. But again, like what did I just say? It's like, don't wait around for the government, right? It's like, it's good that they're going to like kind of lighten up and go back on some of those policies, but you guys are probably going to need financing too. And that's another opportunity, particularly for people with big wallets that are like, well, I have a lot more money that I want to invest in this industry than I can do in just any one small farm. So I'm
Mhm.
sure that there will be people who want to get involved that will say, what else do you have? And
Yeah,
and
that's
they
it.
just
I
they
can see
care
that
more
as a
about the
huge.
impact. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
definitely. Oh yeah, for sure. It's very cool. And so I have one last question for you. Why are you serving the industry this way? What are you most passionate about when you wake up every day?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to say too much on climate change because that's not really what we're all about. That's not really but what I am concerned about is just generally pollution and the impact that pollution has on our environment and the impact that it has on our health. And I'd say that's probably like my biggest driving force for getting
Mm.
involved in this way, where again, it's for me, it's about how do we make progress? And when I ask myself, how do we make progress? I go back to, well, we get together and we decide the world that we want to live into and the world that we want to pass on to our future generations. And one of the best ways to do that is, and one of the great things about this country that we take for granted as Americans, you want to talk about freedom. We're actually free to do whatever we want as far as operating in the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
So you can vote with your wallet. You can invest in things that you want to invest in. You can do it by buying their products. You can do it by handing them a check and saying, hey, pay me back, don't pay me back. All it takes is us getting together, getting ourselves organized, and we don't need the government to tell us what we can and can't do. I can assure you this, if you're positively impacting other people around you, the government's not going to stop you from doing pretty much anything. That's really all the only requirement it is. If you're not hurting people and you're trying to actually do good in the world, most people will just stay out of your way. And so that's kind of for me where the passion and the driving force comes from is let's build a platform and let's get people investing in a healthier future for all of us. And I want to see sustainable practices kind of take over in all aspects of business, but I want to see I want to see the soil and water health in our country improve. I want to see the soil and water health across the globe improve. Because if we can start there, I think it will solve a lot of other problems. And then we can kind of figure out, well, what are those other problems that are left over to fix?
Right. And I always say that the greatest stewards of the earth are farmers. And it's great that the information can also flow the other way too, back into the community to show what is true and what's false, and yeah, make it a better world. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So where can say again where people can find you?
Yeah, sure. Let's do Instagram and Facebook. You can find us at NetGreen Capital. So that one's easy. The other place to find us, go to our webpage, www.netgreen.com. And there's a contact us button right on the homepage if you want to reach out. You can use that. Our email is listed in the footer, so you can email us, reach out to us on social media. But if you got questions, please, reach out, talk to me. You can tell we're pushing for a regenerative, sustainable business model. But we want to talk to everyone, so just come and reach out and have a conversation. It's always worth talking to somebody.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Rob, for joining me today. Great conversation. I'm so interested in what you're doing. We'll have to keep in touch for sure.
Thank you, Chrissy. I appreciate it.
Thanks for to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, links are provided in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to North American Egg Spotlight on YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram channels. And the podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Listen Notes, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like the episode, I would love it if you shared it. Have a great day.